The unexpected recruit. Commander Vexthel's crystalline appendages shimmered with agitation as she reviewed the application before her. The holographic display cast prismatic patterns across her translucent command center, but she barely noticed the usually soothing light show. Her focus remained fixed on one impossible detail. Species: human. "This must be a processing error," she announced to the empty room, her voice resonating through her crystalline form in harmonic frequencies. The elite Galactic Defense Academy hadn't survived 10,000 cycles by taking unnecessary risks, and accepting a human was the definition of unnecessary risk. Yet the credentials were impeccable. Sarah Chen, age 26 Earth Standard years, graduated top of her class from the Terran Space Force. Combat experience against the swarm incursion in the Orion sector. Multiple commendations for unconventional problem-solving under extreme duress. Whatever that meant. The Academy's AI chimed in, its neutral tones designed to soothe agitated instructor crystals. "Commander, the application has been triple verified. The Human Diplomatic Corps insists this candidate's acceptance would demonstrate the Galactic Council's commitment to species equality." Vexthel's crystalline structure vibrated with what her species considered laughter. Equality. They evolved on a Category 12 death world. Their bones are reinforced with calcium deposits like natural armor. Their endurance rivals the marathons of Centaurid Prime. They digest proteins by flooding their own bodies with acid. "All true, Commander," the AI agreed. "However, the diplomatic implications." "Fine." Vexthel cut in, her form briefly flashing crimson. "Process the application. But she goes through the crucible like everyone else. No special accommodations." 3 days later, Sarah Chen stood at attention before the Academy's processing center, a slender figure in standard-issue environmental armor that seemed almost delicate compared to the massive alien forms around her. Her black hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, dark eyes calmly taking in the crystalline spires and gravity-defying architecture of the Academy. The other new recruits gave her a wide berth. Literally, in the case of the gaseous nebulans who drifted at least 5 meters away at all times. A hulking Traxian warrior, their exoskeleton gleaming with tribal markings, whispered to a silicon-based Petrox, "How long do you think the soft skin survives the crucible?" 1 cycle. 2. "I heard they break if you look at them wrong." The Petrox rumbled back, their crystalline structure crackling with amusement. Sarah maintained her parade rest stance, pretending not to hear. After spending 3 years on the Orion front, alien prejudices barely registered anymore. Let them talk. They'd learn soon enough. Commander Vexthel materialized before the assembled recruits, her crystalline form towering 3 meters high. "Welcome, candidates, to the elite Galactic Defense Academy. You represent the finest warriors from 37 species across 12 galaxies. Over the next 60 cycles, we will determine which of you are truly worthy to join our ranks." Her prismatic gaze fixed on Sarah. "Some of you come from worlds we once considered too primitive to produce viable candidates. The Crucible cares nothing for your origins. It demands only excellence, or it breaks you." Sarah met the commander's gaze steadily. After facing down a swarm queen with nothing but a damaged pulse rifle and a crazy idea involving atmospheric pressure differentials, very little could intimidate her anymore. "Your first test begins now," Vexthel announced. The ground beneath them shimmered and transformed into a training grid of impossible geometries. The Crucible's entrance exam. A simple task. Cross this field while maintaining molecular cohesion under shifting gravitational forces. The current record is 37 minutes. Sarah studied the course, noting the subtle distortions in spacetime that indicated gravitational flux points. Her mind rapidly calculated vectors, remembering similar conditions during the Battle of Proxima, where her unit had to adapt to a damaged artificial gravity generator. "Begin." Vexthel's command rang out like breaking crystal. The other recruits moved cautiously, testing each step. The Nebulons had an early advantage, their gaseous forms more resistant to gravitational shifts. The Traxian warrior took one confident stride and was immediately slammed into the ground by a 3G spike. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the subtle pulses in the field. Then she moved. Not with the careful precision the others use, but in a fluid dance that looked almost random. She bounced off high-gravity zones like springboards, used low-G pockets to sail over hazards, and somehow stayed one step ahead of the shifting forces. 3 minutes later, she stood at the finish line, breathing slightly elevated but otherwise unruffled. The other recruits froze in their tracks. Commander Vex Thel's crystalline form flickered through a rainbow of shocked colors. "How?" the commander demanded. That course was designed to be impossible to predict. Sarah shrugged slightly. "With respect, Commander, try living on a planet with constant tectonic activity, seasonal gravitational fluctuations from a binary star system, and weather patterns that can flip from calm to lethal in minutes. Humans don't just adapt to chaos. We thrive in it." As she watched the humans' measured response, Vexthal felt the first tremor of understanding. Perhaps accepting this Deathworlder wasn't just a diplomatic necessity. Perhaps it was time for the Academy itself to adapt. The real question was, were they ready for what that meant? Breaking protocol. The Academy's observation chamber hummed with concerned murmurs as senior instructors watched their most controversial recruit face the void chamber. Through the quantum blast viewport, Sarah Chen stood before a featureless black cube that seemed to absorb both light and hope. "She can't possibly survive this one," Instructor Merrick's whispered, his photonic form flickering anxiously. The void chamber was designed to test psychological resilience against cosmic isolation. Even the hive mind species crack after 10 minutes. Commander Vexthal remained silent, her crystalline structure still bearing traces of color distortion from yesterday's gravity course incident. The human had already broken 3 course records in 2 days. Each victory defied not just expectations, but basic synapsychology. Inside the chamber, Sarah sat cross-legged in the absolute darkness as the air slowly thinned. The chamber was designed to simulate deep space isolation. No light, minimal atmosphere, and a creeping sense of insignificance in the face of infinite void. Most species experienced extreme panic within minutes. Instead of fighting it, Sarah closed her eyes and steadied her breathing. Her mind drifted to childhood memories of deep-sea diving off the Pacific coast, where darkness and pressure created their own kind of void. She learned then that the trick wasn't to resist the emptiness, but to become part of it. Hours passed. The instructors watched in disbelief as their monitoring equipment showed the human's vital signs actually stabilizing. She appeared to be meditating. "Impossible," Merrick's buzzed. "The psychic dampener should be triggering extreme isolation anxiety." "Should we terminate the test?" another instructor asked, their energy form crackling with uncertainty. "No," Vexthal decided. "I want to see how long she lasts." The answer, it turned out, was 18 hours. When the chamber finally opened, Sarah emerged looking refreshed, as if she'd just taken a pleasant nap. The instructor's collective shock registered on sensors 3 decks away. "Cadet Chin." Vexthal's voice carried a hint of strain. "Explain." Sarah stretched casually, working out minor muscle kinks. "Humans have been practicing meditation and sensory deprivation techniques for thousands of years, Commander. Some of our monks voluntarily spend years in isolation caves. Compared to that, this was just a quiet afternoon. The revelation that humans voluntarily subjected themselves to isolation for spiritual growth caused several junior instructors to destabilize and require emergency recalibration. But it was the next test that truly shattered protocols. The maze of impossibility stood before Sarah like a twisted monument to non-Euclidean geometry. Its walls shifted between dimensions, its corridors rearranged themselves randomly, and its very existence seemed to offend basic physics. "The objective," Vexthal explained, trying to maintain composure, "is to reach the center. In theory, no one has ever succeeded. Most candidates achieve enlightenment through accepting the impossibility of the task. Sarah studied the maze thoughtfully. These dimensional shifts, they follow quantum probability patterns, right? Correct. The maze reconfigures based on advanced quantum mechanics that even our most advanced AI can't predict. Sarah smiled. Has anyone ever tried just walking straight through? Before Vexthal could process the question, Sarah strode forward with absolute confidence. The maze's walls twisted and warped around her, but she moved as if taking a casual stroll through a park. Where barriers should have been, gaps appeared. Where paths should have ended, new ones formed. She reached the center in 3 minutes. The Academy's AI had to be rebooted after trying to calculate the statistical impossibility of what they'd just witnessed. How? Vexthal demanded, her crystalline form practically vibrating with confusion. The quantum fluctuations are influenced by observation and intent, Sarah completed. Basic quantum mechanics. We learned that in high school. The maze changes based on probability, but probability itself is affected by observation. So I simply chose to observe paths that would lead to success. That's not how quantum mechanics works. Merrick's protested. Maybe not for you, Sarah replied kindly. But humans have a special talent for warping reality through sheer stubborn optimism. We call it the placebo effect. Sometimes, believing something is possible makes it possible. Later, in her private chambers, Vexthal reviewed the day's footage for the 100th time. The human wasn't just surviving their impossible tests. She was revealing fundamental flaws in their understanding of what impossible meant. More disturbing were the reports from other instructors. The remaining candidates had started emulating the human's approaches. A Nebulon had successfully completed the gravity course using Sarah's bouncing technique. A Traxian warrior had managed 15 minutes in the void chamber through attempted meditation. Send me everything we have on human educational methods, she commanded the AI. And their history of impossible achievements. There's something we're missing. The AI's response was immediate. Commander, you may want to sit down for this. Their historical archives are concerning. Shall I start with their habit of running 42.2 kilometers for fun, or their tradition of climbing mountains because, and I quote, they're there. For the first time in her long career, Commander Vexthal wondered if they hadn't just admitted a student to the Academy. They'd invited a revolution. The system shock. The Academy's central AI had never experienced what organics called a crisis of confidence until it began analyzing Sarah Chen's test results. Its quantum processors hummed with increasing intensity as it attempted to reconcile impossibility with observed reality. Commander, it announced during an emergency staff meeting, I believe I may be malfunctioning. Commander Vexthal's crystalline form shimmered with concern. Around the holographic conference table, other instructors paused their heated debate about the human cadet. Explain, she ordered. I have been monitoring Cadet Chen's problem-solving methodologies. They do not conform to any known logic patterns. When faced with an insurmountable obstacle, she ignores its insurmountability. The AI projected a series of training scenarios. In each one, Sarah faced challenges designed to be physically or logically impossible. And in each one, she succeeded through what the AI could only classify as lateral thinking, taken to an illogical extreme. She treats physics like suggestions, Instructor Merrick's noted, his photonic form pulsing with agitation. Worse, the AI continued, her methods are proving infectious. Observe. New holographic footage appeared, showing other cadets during their free training hours. A group of Pitrox crystals attempted to replicate Sarah's quantum maze strategy, with partial success. A young Traxian warrior had abandoned traditional battle stances in favor of what Sarah called parkour. This morning, the AI added, I recorded a Nebulon attempting to whistle. They don't even have physical forms. Commander Vexthal watched the footage with growing concern. In just 1 week, Sarah Chen had begun dismantling 10,000 cycles of carefully developed training protocols. Not through defiance or rebellion, but through cheerful innovation. Perhaps most disturbing, the AI continued, is her effect on the hive mind collective. The footage shifted to the Academy's communal dining area. Sarah sat surrounded by a group of connected beings from the Nexus cluster, allegedly explaining the human concept of individual thought over something she called coffee. They've started requesting personal names, the AI reported, genuine distress coloring its usual neutral tones. This morning, one of them asked about fashion choices. Vexthel's crystalline structure vibrated with suppressed emotion. Where is Cadet Chen now? Currently, she is rewriting the combat simulation protocols. She's what? In the primary training arena, Sarah stood before a holographic control panel, surrounded by fascinated alien cadets. Her fingers danced across the interface as she explained her modifications. See, the problem is the simulations are too predictable, she was saying. Real combat is chaos. You need randomness, improvisation. I call this program Murphy's Law Enhancement. What is Murphy's Law? Asked a curious Petrox cadet. Sarah grinned. An ancient human wisdom. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. In combat, you need to be ready for everything to fail spectacularly. That's when humans do our best work. The modified simulation activated. Instead of the standard sequential challenges, the arena erupted into magnificent chaos. Gravity reversed randomly. Weapon systems malfunctioned. Environmental hazards appeared without warning. Nothing worked as intended. To the instructor's amazement, overall cadet performance improved by 47%. They're adapting faster, the AI noted with something like awe. The human's chaos theory is actually producing better results than our optimized protocols. Commander Vexthal watched as Sarah guided a group of cadets through what she called a crazy improvisation exercise. The human had them intentionally using their equipment wrong, finding unorthodox solutions to basic problems, and generally breaking every rule in the training manual. Commander, the AI ventured, I believe we need to reconsider our fundamental understanding of effective training methodology. The human's approach, while seemingly random, shows a deeper pattern. They don't just adapt to chaos. They weaponize it. As if to prove the point, Sarah was now teaching a crystalline entity how to use its own refractive properties to create what she called a disco ball distraction technique. Should we stop this? Instructor Merrick's asked uncertainly. Vexthal watched as the training arena descended into what looked like perfectly controlled mayhem. Cadets who had once moved with rigid precision were now flowing like water, adapting moment to moment, combining their natural abilities in ways the training protocols had never considered. No, she decided. We're witnessing something unprecedented. The human isn't just passing our tests, she's evolving them. And more importantly, she added, watching a hive mind member attempt something Sarah called a cartwheel, she's teaching others to evolve too. The AI's processors hummed thoughtfully. Commander, based on current projections, by the end of this training cycle, we may need to completely rewrite the definition of impossible. I believe, Vexthal replied, her crystalline form shifting to a shade of acceptance. That's exactly what humans do best. In the arena below, Sarah Chen continued her cheerful revolution, one impossible solution at a time. Paradigm shift. The Emergency Council of the Elite Galactic Defense Academy convened in their quantum-shielded chamber, their collective anxiety manifesting in various species-specific ways. Commander Vexthal's crystalline form flickered through stress patterns, while the photonic representatives glowed at frequencies normally associated with cosmic distress signals. The human, first speaker Zixforn announced, their energy form crackling, must be contained. A holographic display showed Sarah Chen teaching a group of cadets something she called tactical improvisation. They watched in horror as she demonstrated how to turn standard-issue environment suits into makeshift propulsion units by, as she put it, strategically venting atmosphere. Contained. Commander Vexthal's voice carried harmonics of disbelief. Have you reviewed the latest training metrics? The data streamed through the chamber's ambient field. Overall cadet performance had increased by 312%. Survival rates in extreme scenarios had doubled. Even the hive mind collective had developed what they termed tactical individuality, a concept that had their species' philosophers in an uproar. The humans' methods are dangerous, another council member protested. She's teaching cadets to think for themselves. Vexthel completed. Adapt? Innovate? Yesterday, Zixforn said gravely, I observed a crystalline entity attempting to breakdance. This cannot continue. Before the debate could escalate, the Academy's AI manifested its holographic interface. Pardon the interruption, but you need to see this. The human has initiated something new in Training Zone 7. The display shifted to show Sarah leading an unlikely group. A Nebulon, a Traxian warrior, and 3 members of the Crystalline Collective. They faced the Academy's most notorious challenge, the Omega Scenario, a simulation so difficult it had never been completed in the Academy's history. Stop them, Zixforn ordered. That simulation requires a full tactical team off. Watch, Vexthal commanded softly. The scenario began. As usual, it presented an impossible situation. A colony under attack from multiple threats, failing systems, astronomical odds. But instead of following standard protocols, Sarah's team moved like a chaotic dance troupe. The Nebulon, instead of maintaining standard gaseous cohesion, deliberately dispersed to create a sensor-confusing fog. The Traxian warrior used their exoskeleton's natural resonance to amplify the crystalline entity's refracted energy beams. And Sarah somehow coordinated it all while using her environment suit in ways that made the physics department file formal complaints. This is madness, someone whispered. This, Vexthal corrected, is evolution. They watched in stunned silence as the impossible scenario reached its climax. Sarah's team hadn't just survived. They'd revolutionized the entire concept of tactical response. Where traditional methods failed, they created new ones. When systems broke down, they used the breakdown itself as a weapon. The simulation ended with a success rating unprecedented in Academy history. Do you understand now? Vexthal asked the council. The human isn't just passing our tests. She's teaching others to transcend them. Every limitation we assumed was absolute, she treats as optional. But the protocols, Zixforn began, are obsolete. The AI interrupted, its voice carrying new harmonics of understanding. I have analyzed every iteration of Cadet Chen's innovations. She operates on a principle we never considered, that chaos itself can be a tactical advantage. The display shifted to show dozens of training sessions. In each one, Sarah's methods appeared random, even reckless. But the AI highlighted subtle patterns, ways she turned disadvantages into advantages, how she taught others to think beyond their species' limitations. She calls it thinking outside the box, the AI explained. Though I'm still trying to determine what this box is and why anyone would think inside it. Commander Vexthel's crystalline form stabilized into a decisive pattern. We have a choice to make. We can either resist this evolution, or... She paused, her next words carrying the weight of paradigm shift. We can learn from it. Learn? From a Deathworlder. Zixforn's energy field fluctuated with incredulity. Perhaps, Vexthal suggested, that's exactly why we should learn from her. Her species evolved on a planet that should have killed them. Instead of dying, they turned every challenge into an opportunity. They don't just survive chaos. They master it. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. In the display, Sarah was now teaching a hive mind collective how to think creatively through what she called brainstorming, a concept that had already spawned 3 new philosophical movements among their species. The galaxy is changing, Vexthal continued. The old ways, the rigid protocols, they're not enough anymore. We need warriors who can think beyond the impossible. And like it or not, That human is teaching our cadets exactly that. The council watched as Sarah's impromptu class devolved into what she called a group celebration, complete with attempted interspecies high fives and something she termed the wave. Motion to officially revise Academy training protocols, Vex Thal announced, to incorporate human innovation principles. One by one, the council members signaled agreement, some more reluctantly than others. As the motion passed, the AI noted an interesting phenomenon. For the first time in recorded history, several council members appeared to be attempting to smile. In Training Zone 7, blissfully unaware of the philosophical revolution she'd sparked, Sarah Chen continued teaching the galaxy's future defenders that the impossible was just another word for hasn't been tried the human way yet. Evolution's edge. The day of the final evaluation dawned with all three of the Academy's suns aligned, a rare phenomenon that the more spiritually inclined species took as an omen. Whether good or bad remained a matter of heated debate. Sarah Chen stood with her fellow cadets in the grand arena, now barely recognizable as the same group that had started training 3 months ago. The Nebulon had developed a technique for rapid shape-shifting that defied their species' traditional forms. The Traxian warrior had abandoned their ceremonial armor in favor of a hybrid style that incorporated human parkour. Even the Hivemind Collective had developed distinct personalities, though they still argued about who had the best nickname. Commander Vex Thal materialized in the center of the arena, her crystalline form radiating with formal authority. Cadets, today you face the ultimate trial. For 10,000 cycles, this test has defined the elite of the Galactic Defense Force. No changes, no modifications, no human innovations. She paused, her form flickering with what might have been amusement. The test itself will make those unnecessary. The arena transformed around them. The familiar training ground vanished, replaced by a scenario that made several cadets question their sensory inputs. They stood on what appeared to be the surface of a dying star, gravity fluctuating wildly as space-time itself began to unravel. Your mission, Vex Thal announced, is survival, not victory. There is no victory condition. Simply survive longer than any previous class. The record? Sarah asked. 17 minutes, 12 seconds. Sarah looked at her team, because somewhere along the way they had become her team. The Nebulon, who now insisted on being called Jazz because they liked Earth music. The Traxian warrior, who had learned to combine their species' strength with acrobatic grace. The 3 Hivemind members who had developed such distinct personalities they now argued about fashion choices. Ready to make history? She asked. They responded with various species-specific affirmatives, including Jazz's attempt at a human thumbs-up, which was impressive for a gaseous being. The scenario activated fully. Reality itself seemed to break down around them. Gravitational forces pulled in impossible directions. Temporal anomalies caused seconds to stretch into hours and back again. Space folded and unfolded like cosmic origami. But where previous classes had fought against the chaos, Sarah's team flowed with it. Jazz dispersed into multiple forms, using the gravitational fluctuations to create a network of gaseous safety nets. The Traxian, who had recently started calling themselves Alex in Sarah's honor, used their enhanced exoskeleton to anchor the team during reality shifts. The Hivemind trio coordinated their psychic abilities in ways their species had never attempted, creating stable pockets in the chaos. And Sarah danced. There was no better word for it. She moved through the breaking reality like she was part of it, anticipating shifts before they happened, turning temporal anomalies into advantages. When a particularly violent gravity wave threatened to tear the team apart, she somehow used it to propel them to a safer position. In the observation chamber, the Academy's AI was having what it termed a metaphysical breakdown. They're not just surviving, it reported to the gathered instructors. They're harmonizing with the chaos. Commander Vex Thal watched with what could only be described as pride. Of course they are. That's what humans taught us, isn't it? Chaos isn't the enemy. It's simply another tool. 20 minutes passed, then 30. At the 1 hour mark, the AI actually stuttered. "Commander," it said, "they're not just surviving anymore. They're stabilizing the scenario. The humans team is actually reducing the chaos by embracing it." Vexthal finished. End simulation. The arena returned to normal, leaving Sarah's team in a victory pose that would later become infamous in Academy training materials. Jazz had somehow managed to form their gaseous structure into a champagne bottle shape, while the High-Mun trio attempted a group high five that only mostly worked. "Cadet Chen," Vexthal addressed them, her crystalline form radiating complex emotions. "Your team has not only broken every record in Academy history, you have fundamentally changed our understanding of what's possible." Sarah smiled. "Permission to speak freely, Commander." "Granted. That's what humans do best. We don't just adapt to the impossible, we redefine it. And now," she gestured to her teammates, "we're teaching others to do the same." The commander's form shifted to a rare shade of revelation. "When we accepted the first human cadet, we thought we were testing you. Instead, you tested us, showed us that our limitations were self-imposed, that chaos and order aren't opposites, but partners in a dance we'd forgotten how to perform." "Also," Jazz interjected, attempting to sound scholarly despite their gaseous state, "humans make everything more fun." The observation chamber erupted in laughter, even from species that hadn't evolved with that capability. Later, as the graduation ceremonies concluded, Commander Vexthal presented Sarah with not just her graduation credentials, but a new designation: Chief Innovation Officer of the Elite Galactic Defense Academy. "The galaxy is changing," Vexthal announced to the assembled graduates. "New threats emerge that defy conventional responses. We need defenders who can think beyond the possible, who can turn chaos itself into an ally." "Thanks to Cadet. No, Officer Chen. We're finally learning how." Sarah stood with her team, watching the three suns set in perfect alignment. "You know what this means, right?" she asked them. "That humans have revolutionized galactic military training." Alex the Traxian suggested. "That we've proven chaos theory can be weaponized," offered one of the Hive-Mind trio. "Nope," Sarah grinned. "It means it's time for a graduation party. I'm thinking interspecies karaoke." The AI, monitoring this exchange, quickly began calculating the probability of karaoke, causing another fundamental shift in galactic civilization. Its conclusion: with humans involved, anything was possible. And that perhaps was the greatest lesson of all.